Hi, I'm Rabbi Ira Eben from Congregation Oav Shalom, Modern Orthodox Synagogue in Merrick, Long Island, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Rabbi Howard Goldsmith from Congregation Emmanuel, the Reform Synagogue in Westchester. And this is Sacred Texts Left to Right. And we are very excited to present this source, and we're going to have a great discussion. And I turn over the floor to my friend and colleague, Rabbi Howie Goldsmith.
Great. Thank you, Ira. Today we are looking at the first tractate of Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, and it's about New Year's, not the New Year 2019, but a whole host of other New Years. And it reads as follows. The four New Years are, on the 1st of Nisan, the New Year for the kings and for the festivals. On the 1st of Elul, the New Year for the tithing of animals. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon say, on the 1st of Tishrei. On the 1st of Tishrei, the new year for years, for the sabbatical years and for the jubilee years, and for the planting and for the vegetables. And on the 1st of Shvat, the new year for the trees, according to the words of the house of Shammai. The house of Hillel says, on the 15th thereof. And of course, as usual, we go with Hillel. And so it is this last new year, the new year of the trees, that we are going to discuss today, because this new year, which has become known as Tu Bishvat, the 2 being the 15 of Shvat, which is the month that we are in right now, has become New Year for the trees, and it has become among a large section of the Jewish community a festival for environmentalism that has really taken on kind of the universalistic goals of improving our world. We had this holiday about trees, and we said we love trees. Let's hug them a little bit tighter and put a Jewish imprimatur on it, and find a way to celebrate earth and environmental principles. So Ira, you're the one that had the good idea to discuss what has become something of a machlochet, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Right. So as you shared your perspective, of course, I started writhing in pain because somehow, although environmentalism is a wonderful thing, and as I shared, some of my best friends are environmentalists, nonetheless, somehow I think that should be reserved for Earth Day and not for Tu B'Shvat. And in fact, it never had any intention. And Tu B'Shvat was never part of environmentalism. That was never what the meaning of Tu B'Shvat was all about. It was about the national homeland. Now, the 15th, when it says it's the Rosh Hashanah for the trees, they're not getting together and listening to a shofar and having honey and things like that. It means that the Mishnah is coming to tell us a simple idea, that when you're a farmer and you have fruit trees, so the tithing takes place, that the new year of the basically taxes, your tax season ends on the 14th day of Shvat, and it begins on the 15th day of Shvat, and that's your fiscal year for your tithing. And that's all we know about Tu B'Shvat, and it was about a tradition of a connection to the land of Israel from our homeland. And so it was really completely a nationalistic holiday. It was about the Jewish people and their connection to the land, their connection to planting fruit trees in the land, and not about environmentalism in general. And I think the bigger question that we should talk about is that what happens when people, I should say, take Jewish rituals and make them global issues like environmentalism. And what does that do as far as detracting to its official nationalistic original intentions?
Okay, fabulous. Okay, thank you for laying out the potential disagreement, and I think there will be some disagreement here, which is always good when that happens.
Yeah.
From my perspective as a progressive rabbi, I want to find pathways to Judaism and Jewish tradition for my congregants, not just for my congregants, but for Jews at large. And there is probably nothing less exciting than tithing of fruit to get people excited about Jewish ritual.
You've never done that in the shorts on a beach. It's really.
I've never tithed. No, never.
No. Come tithe with me, Howie.
Exactly.
It's a whole experience.
Now, thank you, Ira. Now, my goal is to get people excited about Jewish ritual, to understand our connection with the land, to recognize that while there are no leaves or buds on the trees right now here in Westchester, or even as far south as Long Island, that in the land of Israel, the sap is starting to run and the trees are starting to come back to life.
Yeah, by the way, it snowed in Jerusalem yesterday, but that's another whole story.
It's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand that connection. I want people to see that as we celebrate Tu Bishvat in whatever ways that we do, that it is one more way to connect us with the land of Israel, no matter where we are in the world, Westchester, Long Island, or Johannesburg. And that has an intrinsic value in and of itself. But to do that, I'm also able to note that as a people who were agrarian in biblical times, that the way that we took care of the land, the way that we took care of the trees, the way that we took care of our farmland and rotating crops and giving the land a break every few years, that these do have environmental implications. And they differ greatly from some of the less savory practices of agribusiness these days. When we buy a peach in February in New York, it has come from Chile or it has come from South Africa, and it has a huge environmental impact. If we can instead highlight the traditional connection that we have with the land of Israel as a way to show our duty to take care of the land, we can then talk about both the important environmental implications of that, and by extension, the obligation that we have to take care of that land. And at the same time, through that way that it's already in people's consciousness, we can raise up our connection with the land of Israel. So for me, it's not an either or. It's not that it has to be nationalistic or it has to be universal. It's not that it has to be just particularistic or universal. It's both. And if I can use what I do see as the universal messages of this holiday to get people excited and interested in the particularistic messages, then I've accomplished two things.
Right. So we're back to, we had this discussion last week, what we call ideal versus b'diavad, which is l'chatchila versus b'diavad, ideal versus this is where we are. What you're saying is I can't connect to the people, to the land of Israel and fruit trees. And so what I need to do is I need to sort of channel it through this progressive idea of environmentalism. That's great, but what you've done is you've really, there's an old saying, Howie, when you're everywhere, you're nowhere, right? If you're focusing on all these things, this important view, again, and Judaism has a view of environmentalism and conservation, and that's great, but that's not necessarily the day what Tu B'Shvat is all about. Tu B'Shvat is specifically about connecting to the land, about planting trees in the land of Israel, but also about the never-ending connection to the Jewish people on the land. And more so is that the promise that one day that the land will once again bear fruit. And that's a symbol. When we watch, when I get a peach from the land of Israel, that is a testament of the prophecy that was stated very clearly that the land in Isaiah, that the land will once again bloom after years and years where it was completely barren. Of course, this famous quote by Mark Twain in 1867, if I'm not mistaken, about how when he visited Jerusalem, there was nothing there. It was completely barren. It was desolate. And now, 150 years later, the land has bloomed incredible. The fruits that we see today are miracles of the promise that the land will once again bear fruit when the people return, as was mentioned in Leviticus.
Okay.
So when you focus on environmentalism and all that's great, you lose that. How many of your people are appreciating the significance of the fruits from the land of Israel and the fulfillment of prophecy of our traditional connections to the land?
But that prophecy was not fulfilled strictly by divine intervention. The prophecy was filled by proper stewardship of the land, of the people who went there and took care of it and resuscitated it.
Absolutely, but for 1,800 years, then nothing happened. I'm sure the land was attempted to be cultivated for 1,800 years when the Jewish people were no longer had a presence there. It wasn't until, with incredible hard work and incredible and diligence and conviction of our heroes from the pioneers of who rebuilt the land, and then the land bore fruit,
right?
Just as God had promised. When you talk about fulfillment of prophecy, we're not waiting for the sky to come down and here it is. We're actively involved in bringing that prophecy and bringing it to fruition. So,
right, but if we had just sat inside having a Tu B'Shvat Seder and studying Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, the land never would have bore fruit again. We had to relearn how to take stewardship of the land, how to take care of the earth in order.
Stop. That's where you went wrong. To take stewardship of the land, not how to take care of the earth. Taking care of the earth was something else. And that's for Earth Day. And let Earth Day, let all your tree hugging loving people go in and hug as many trees as you can on Earth Day.
I don't see how there is an intimate connection between the two. Without the knowledge of how to take care of a land, we would not be able to take care of the land. And so I don't think that we could celebrate all of the trees that are in Israel, fruit bearing and otherwise, if we did not also recognize the importance of taking care of the earth, not just the land. You wouldn't have one without the earth. They're utterly dependent on land.
I'm going to zoom out for a second, if
Please.
I can, like what I did with my hand there, right? This becomes a greater issue. The greater issue is taking many of our traditional rituals and making them more global. I'll give an example. The holiday of Passover, which is a holiday of God freeing our people and us becoming a nation. And the verse that people forget is not "let my people go," which was never said. And it has nothing to do with freedom. It's about "shlach ami bi'avduni," send my people out so they will serve me. It talked about a greater mission of the Jewish people, and not just about freedom and slavery throughout the world. It is not somehow that these rituals have been hijacked and they're no longer Jewish rituals with their intended purpose, but they have these global purposes, which are all very nice. I'm against slavery too. I believe in freedoms and liberties as well. But that's not what Passover is all about. And this is not what Tu B'Shvat is all about.
Okay, but for Passover, we have this whole holiday, and then after the holiday, 36 times in the Torah, right, it says you should treat the stranger well, for you were strangers. That's getting to those liberties for everybody. That's not about Jews.
Absolutely, exactly. But the holiday, and so that's something that's part of the mission of the Jewish people, to love the stranger. It's all there, as you said, 36 times. But the holiday of Passover was not about that. The holiday of Passover was about the Jewish people becoming a nation, so they could serve God
and
represent God in this world.
One of the ways we serve God is to love the stranger because we were strangers.
One of the ways. There's a million ways. One of them is to tithe fruits, which you're going to do it when next time we hang out, right?
Tithing fruit.
Tithing fruit. There are many ways to serve God.
Right.
One of the ways is to believe in conservationism and environmentalism. That's another way to serve God. That's not what this ritual is about. And when you keep jumping, when progressives end up adding all of these angles, what they've done is they've detracted from what the original intention was, which was that it was a nationalistic holiday, a connection to the people, to God, or in this case in Tu B'Shvat, to the land that God promised them for 2,000 years. And so, I'll give you the last word.
Okay.
Until I cut you off.
I think the difference is that you see, from what you're saying, you see the addition of universalistic messages to these holidays as detracting from them. And I see bringing universalistic themes into Tu B'Shvat. Into Tu B'Shvat. I'm going to keep it about Tu B'Shvat. Bringing universalistic themes into Tu B'Shvat is additive. It doesn't detract, it adds. And I think it's a really important difference in tension between a Reform perspective and an Orthodox perspective. And I'm glad that we're able to use this holiday to lift up that difference. It's an important distinction.
I agree, and as always, it's always fun having this conversation and discussion. And for all our 3 listeners out there, we wish everybody a happy Tu B'Shvat.